Hi, everybody, and this is Linda Martin and James Junkin with another episode of the Risk Matrix.
The Risk Matrix, roll tide, baby. Billy Henderson,
the Risk Matrix
in the Matrix.
You're in the Matrix, baby. And as you can see, we've got a guest here today with us. He's already been introduced by James, Bill Henderson. We're going to get to that in a second, but first, James is going to give us a little information about who is sponsoring us this week.
Today's episode of the Risk Matrix by Veriforce is sponsored by SiteDocs. It's difficult to maintain a safe workplace using paper or inadequate software. Today, over 3,000 plus companies use SiteDocs safety management software to help streamline safety operations with digital forms, ensure compliance with real-time monitoring, and reduce injuries with advanced analytics. This makes safety compliance faster and easier for everyone, saving valuable time, money, and lives. Manage your entire workplace safety program for mobile apps and the web. Visit sitedocs.com to see how to make your company's safety compliance easier, faster, and better.
Thanks, James. And like I said, we have a guest today, Bill Henderson. You can see him on the screen with us. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So Bill has a long history of experience in safety. He's got 35 years of experience. He works for an insurance company now, but he's a safety consultant. And we've got a topic today for you, Bill. Welcome. And James, I'm going to let you lead off with the first question.
Well, Bill, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your service as a valuable member of Veriforce's Strategic Advisory Board. I've known you for many years, and it's great to have you on the show today, giving us some perspectives from the field, the safety implementation side of the house. You know, Dr. Martin and I, and you in your career now with the insurance, we don't get in the field as much as we like to, as much as we used to. So it's good to make sure that the safety management systems that we're designing are being implemented at the sharp end, where the boots get muddy and people really get hurt and people really die. So thank you for joining us, give us some perspectives from that. So Bill, tell us a little bit about you, your background, how you got into safety, et cetera.
Well, I'm that guy that accidentally got into safety way back in the 80s. I was working for an aircraft manufacturer, General Dynamics, and they came around one day and said, "Hey, we got to have a safety guy. You want to do it? Does it pay more?" I said, "Yeah, you get another 50 cents. I'm in." That's how I got started.
And you never got a raise since, right, Bill?
It's exactly. Same.
About a year into that, you said, "Can I give that 50 cents back and go back to doing what I was doing?"
Well, it was way easier then than it is now, let me tell you.
Yeah.
All week we're concerned about back then, it's your safety glasses on. You know, don't worry about we're testing this engine over here on the flight line. Some safety glasses on, no hearing protection. That was optional. If it bothered you, then wear them. But we evolved, and we learned about fall protection and hearing protection, and I witnessed an injury. And this is, I think, common with a lot of people that get into the safety field, and through the process of this person and seeing their suffering and pain and recovery and so forth, I got a little more interested in how can we stop this, and I started taking some classes and getting in that early on in my career in the 90s when it came about. I got my certified safety and health official. And took more classes and started learning more. Industry went down, got a new administration. I went into the steel manufacturing business and on the safety side. And I was that guy that I needed to understand. That's how my brain works. If you come tell me this isn't right, what you're telling me to do doesn't make sense. If I've done that job, then I understand what you're saying, and we can have a conversation about how to make it better. I did every job they had. I loaded trucks, I melted steel, I did it all. Fast forward a few years, I'm trying to keep this short, go into the oil and gas industry. Again, same thing. I need to understand your exposure. So I worked the floors, I worked the solids control, I did the whole 9 yards, just a little bit. I'm not good at it, but I understand your exposure, so I can help you mitigate that. Unfortunately, I've had to make that visit to the house to tell the families that I need you to come with me. I've got someone here to watch your children, and we need to go. And I don't wish that on anyone. That's what we're trying to prevent. And that's it in a nutshell. That's the quick bite.
Well, let's get down and dirty with it, because you do have a lot of field experience. And, one of the things that we've been noodling around and we kind of talked about before we hit play on this, is how has the field changed? Has it changed or not changed? And what are the innovations for us to get ahead of the curve on some of the things that are going on? Because there's so much going on, especially like on a construction site, or places where there's a lot of stuff. How do we keep track of this stuff? And what are the innovations that are coming out that you see that are helpful?
There's a tremendous amount of good resources out there. There's some tools to use. And I think what I'm seeing is we're putting so much emphasis on making sure we got that documentation that these guys are walking around with a clipboard that's got 5 or 6 pages of a safety topic.
Yep.
And gather everybody around the pickup. I like to see that. Good. You stopped your workers before they got started. You get them around the pickup, but you're only there 2 or 3 minutes. No way did you discuss any of those. I'm not expecting you to have a 30-minute safety meeting, but take 15, 20 minutes, hit one good topic before you break off. But what we're doing is getting them up and just getting a signature. That's one failure. We're failing on many fronts because just look at the numbers. All right, I'm not I don't think that your TRIR is necessarily a reflection of your safety program. I know people that have a terrible TRIR, but they have a good safety system. Conversely, I know people that have a 0 in their safety system. Horrible. So that's not necessarily an indicator. Sir?
Luck.
What?
Yeah.
Luck.
Exactly. Luck. Yeah. Sometimes it's good to be lucky, but in the long run, is it really what you want? Does it match the posters you have on the wall and all the decorations you got up? So we're not really affecting a change. Just look at the fatalities. Just go to the BLS and pull the fatalities up. There's not been a significant change in those numbers in many, many years. We're still burying over 6,000 people every year, and that's unacceptable in the country we live in. So what's the magic button? I don't know. If we can figure that out, none of us is going to have to work again. But we've got to slow this down. I want to not be in the field as much anymore. However, because of the turns, I need to see what's going on. That's the way my brain works. I need to see it. I need to talk to people. I need to know how you are reacting to what we're doing. If we're doing it wrong, let's change. Tell me what you don't like about it so we can pivot. It's all about pivoting. I have a lot of heartburn with a safety professional. I'm gonna put that in quotations. That wants to jump out of the pickup in the air conditioner and run up and eat somebody out like a sweet orange because he thinks he's doing something wrong.
That's the pigeon. We call that the pigeon, right? Swoop in,
yes.
deposit something and leave.
Exactly. And those people don't respect you. They have no respect for you. If you don't have their respect and their trust, then you're not going to make a change at all.
Billy, let me ask you this, because you mentioned it. Safety has evolved since you first got into safety in the 1980s. We have more regulations. We have more formal training. We have more resources than perhaps we've ever had in the profession. But the fatality numbers don't reflect that. And it breaks my heart, because like you and Dr. Martin's experienced this as well, making that notification, doing the investigation, that takes a lot out of me personally when I have to do that. I've got a case right now I'm working, tragedy, that's unfolding. And I've probably done more serious injury and fatality investigations in the last 3 years than I've done in my entire career. So even though we have more resources, it doesn't seem to be impacting as much. You got any thoughts on what might be a cause of that, or some of the causes of that?
You know what my thoughts are going to make some people mad, because I feel like sometimes there's companies that use these resources as chrome on the motorcycle. They're using them to make them look better, to the paper safety, for example. You had an episode on that,
right?
I think two back. They get all the policies that say everything, that check all the boxes, so that they can get their clearance in Veriforce or other programs, so they can move forward and get work. But they don't really put it into practice, right? They're just shining the chrome. They're shining the chrome so that we look like we're doing what we're supposed to do. However, I have a client that I won't mention by name, but he's huge, the third largest in what he does in the United States. And he has one safety professional to cover that entire territory. One.
I just did an assessment, Bill, where they have 8,000 employees and 2 safety professionals to manage the safety management system for 8,000 workers across the entire United States.
That same scenario. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So are we just having talk and putting posters on the wall and making to give the perception that this is what we're doing? Or are we practicing it? I would suggest the latter.
Okay. I was just going to comment, I don't mind chrome on the motorcycle as long as the chrome is to dress up something that's already dressed up, right? So I'm gonna make an example, and I know you guys know about Harleys, right? They're made in Wisconsin, or at least engineered in Wisconsin, and there's nobody who owns a Harley that I know that is not already taking care of that Harley, and they're wiping it down and they're servicing it, whatever. And when they put chrome on that motorcycle, it dresses it up, but it also serves a purpose. So they don't stop maintaining the motorcycle, they maintain everything at the same time. So I mean, I'll kind of take this, I'm an analogy person, and maybe somebody won't follow this, but I think that certainly add some of this innovation, add some of this software as a service, add all of those things, but make sure your house is in order first, your house is cleaned first, before you put that window dressing on there to help you manage things. So example, right? I mean, SiteDocs is our sponsor today, right? And they do, I mean, it's a software as a service. They put things together, they manage the data, and I am all for that. But then you have to use the data that comes into it too, right? So there's a couple pieces to this puzzle. It's you got to have your house in order so that you can collect the data. Then you collect the data, right, in an easier format than doing the paper safety, right, where you're signing things and putting it in a file and trying to scan it or whatever. That's efficiency, right? And then you take that efficiency and you turn it into something that you can use. And that takes a special kind of safety professional on the other side, that you recognize that you're just not collecting, you're actually using it to analyze what you're doing and make it better. I don't know if that analogy made sense, but it did in my own mind anyway.
100%. And we've all mentioned it before, right? On our side, safety's hard, right? There's a ton of hours that go into analyzing your program. Are we doing what we need? There's everything in there that we need, and are we actually doing this? Don't just write it in there. If you're not going to do it, don't put it in your program. I don't care what it is. But on the other hand, for the worker, for the man putting the nails in the board, safety should be easy. We need to make it as easy for them as we can, because if we give them too much to do, they're not going to do it. Take as many decisions away from that guy as you can. If we can engineer it out at the design phase of the project, we have the rails up so that they can't fall. They don't have to put that harness on. It's how many decisions does that worker have to make just putting on a safety harness? How many decisions?
And then to do a complex job. right?
Yes.
I mean, you're asking for a lot of decisions, and then you're also asking them to do a complex, high hazard job. And I'm totally there with you. And that's part of the hazard ID, risk assessment, controls process, is to that's where our work is, right?
Mhm.
Our work with the worker, but our work to work towards getting those controls in place and using the new technology to our advantage.
100%.
So
Don't just use it as a checklist, because they come in, yep, this here, this here, this here, and check the boxes, and you leave. You
Billy,
need to stay long enough to
right.
see if
I've
it's
said it
effective.
once, I've said it a million times. I may say it on every episode that we have. Hazards are best controlled in the planning and design of the work. So I'm thankful for what you just said. If we can have someone work at heights without having to put on fall protection, or we can eliminate their need to work at heights altogether, then we can have a safer environment. And I fully believe what's happening is, as the workforce becomes more complex, the work becomes more complex. There's more technical and more demands made on the worker now than maybe there were made back in the 1980s. There's a lot of pressure to get things done and get them done quickly for production, because margins are tight. Employee turnover. Every company I know that's out there is trying to hire good people. I just saw, for example, in my home state of Alabama, they need 11,000 workers in the automobile manufacturing business. They're down 11,000 people, right? So that just kind of gives you the indication of the desire within industry for new workers and to keep them engaged and to bring them on so production can keep going. But all these complexities that are in there, I think safety professionals and management still have a problem in identifying hazards in the planning stage. Recently, I was with a bunch of safety professionals, and we looked at a problem. And in that problem, about 90% of them were focused on PPE. Let's get them in the right PPE. Let's do the PPE thing. And PPE is important. But sometimes I feel like Heinrich's, not Heinrich, but the hierarchy of controls, we know it, but we only know it academically. The first thing we reach for is PPE, and that ought to be the last thing we think about in a long line of hazard identification, risk assessments that seek to utilize the higher ends of the hierarchy of control. So it's disturbing to me when 9 out of 10 safety professionals reach straight for PPE and never even considered any of the other controls that we have in the hierarchy of controls. So I think that might be a contributing factor to some of the injuries that we have, that we're still not identifying hazards and assessing risk when we're planning the work. We give a guy a 96-page JHA to go out there, or JSA to fill out. We got all this paperwork to fill out when we get out there on site, even before we start the job, and that can become a mere formality, if you will, a checklist, things that you're talking about, when a lot of that work needs to be done higher up the food chain. What say you?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I agree 100%. And I feel like most of the places I go, I'd almost say all of them, upper management is fully on board. Right? The suits around the boardroom, they're fully on board with it. The workers don't want to get hurt. You mentioned the shortage in skilled labor, or workers, period. Forget about the skill, take the skill part out. Workers shortage. Well, where do your supervisors come from? They take what they feel like's the best of what they have. So it may not be the best person for the job. It's not the right person, it's the right now. And we got to fill this spot. We need someone to lead the crew, and you're the best of what we have to pick from. So come on. Or is my friend, whatever. But maybe they're not on board with the safety thing. All they're thinking is their bonus is set based on time delivery,
productivity,
ahead of budget. Yeah. So safety's way down the list on there. So they'll say the right things in the meeting, but all their workers know then it's not really, you don't really want me to stop and take an extra 15 minutes. You want me to get the job done, because the workers typically are going to do what they think their supervisor wants them to do. They're not going to break the rules intentionally.
I agree with that. You know, I've never met a chief executive officer that didn't want their workers to come home safe. I've never met a person like that did not want their workers to come home safe, that has some commitment to safety. I've had some that didn't realize all the things that they needed to do in order to do that, to be in compliance. I've had some that look to their hiring clients and tell them everything that they need to do to meet expectations. I've never had one that just had a total disregard for people's safety. So I think your point is well made, and it's my experience as well. The pressure sometimes comes from the expectations of frontline leadership and the peer pressure within the group. People ask me, why did they not stop the job? And I had an incident not too long ago where it was a SIF incident, but it was a serious injury, but thank goodness it wasn't a fatality. Both companies involved, the senior management wanted them to stop the job. They had policies to stop the job. They had training to stop the job. They reinforced stopping the job. And yet the supervision for these two companies had ample opportunity when the hazard was so obvious after the incident, right? So obvious, but they didn't stop the job. Nobody spoke up. And I think it was because of the peer pressure there on the location between the two supervisors and the staff, right? So we're not getting the message down in the field level, in my opinion, that not only is it okay to stop the job, you have an obligation to do that. You have an obligation to do that. Has that been your experience as well?
It has, and lack of a, I'll go another step, a lack of a good quality accident investigation follow. How many do you see that lack of situational awareness, failure to wear PPE? That PPE wouldn't have stopped this. It's to reduce the severity of the injury should you come into contact with it. That's why it's the last thing you'd use. But it's constantly and failure to stop the job. Does that worker really know that you intend for them to stop work? Because if they really believe that, maybe they would have stopped the job. What say you on that?
So I'm not sure, I'm not sure how you instill that in a person other than, and I'm, boots on the ground safety, but with 8,000 workers, like James said, in the company he was looking at, two people are not going to cover that much ground in order to instill that in people, or to build the relationships that they need to build in order to make sure people know they can stop the job. Then you go to the supervisors, right? The training of the supervisors. How do you instill that in it's a huge problem. I don't know what the answer is. I think, if I had a perfect world, it'd be more safety professionals and more boots on the ground and more people in the field. I know you were saying before we got in the air, you'd like to be doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is more kind of consulting in your field. And that's what it takes, right? That's what it takes. And maybe upper management needs to be getting in the field. You see a lot of CEOs that take the time to get out onto the shop floor or into the field and work a couple days with people and see what they're going. It goes a long way. Do I think that's the answer? I don't know. James said.
Well, I think it all comes down to the L word, and that's leadership. And you've heard this phrase a million times throughout your life, that person was a natural born leader. And that's a bunch of bunk. Leaders are made. It's a mentored trade. And what we're seeing right now in the fatalities, despite having more resources, more tools, more education, more training, more opportunities for professional development. When Bill and Dr. Martin and you and I were coming up, we didn't have a podcast to go to and listen to three safety professionals with a lot of years of experience doing this. We didn't have all these resources. And yet we're killing more people now than we were then. Why? Failure of leadership.
No, we're not killing them.
Yeah,
I,
James.
I would say you're right. I mean, I like the mentored trade thing. That's that you should coin that. Mentored, it's a mentored trade.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I I mean I'm going to go a step farther and say, you know, I think you talked about this, James, on the last show that we did. It's about social media, right? Social media is a good thing. It's connected us. It's made us, you know, mentors available. Um, I'm going to focus on the good thing, because when I was coming up in the field, I didn't have any mentors. Um, and in fact, you would think that I would have female mentors that mentored me coming up. But it was so competitive. There was such a competitive atmosphere that I didn't have that. Now, in my later portion of my career, my colleagues have mentored me. I mean, I consider you guys mentors, and we've kind of banded together to do that. And I think we need more of that. We need more mentorship. We need more concern for each other as professionals. Um, and you know, I'm not to switch the topic, but you know, I also think that we're educating ourselves, but we're not applying ourselves. And I'll include myself in that sometimes. So, you know, the new technology is the greatest and latest and coolest, and I've got the best software. But if I'm not using it and somebody's not showing me or mentoring how to implement this in a really good way, I mean, here drones are a good example. A lot of people in the field are getting drones now, but if you really look deeply into how drones can be used for safety and in the field and building and construction, um, the possibilities are endless. But people are just buying drones and flying them over the site, and that's not, you know, that's not creating change in who gets hurt, or exchanging a drone's value for, you know, putting somebody in a high hazard situation. Some people are doing it, but a lot of people are buying it and then not doing it. And so, you know, if you're going to
Right.
buy a technology, you're going to buy a software, you're going to buy those things, either buy it from somebody who's going to mentor you through it, or make sure you do a wise purchase and discussion with people in the field and how it can be used, etc., before you make that plunge. So I'm sorry to switch gears
100%.
there, but
No, no, I'm glad you did, Dr. Martin. Thank you. And yeah, I'm that guy. I have a drone, and I use it to try to identify the hazards, especially at height. Once we get to the part where it's blocked, and I don't want to go up
right.
there. And but so I use it to find that. I'm not using it to get a cool picture of the site. That's
Yeah.
not the point. But I'm so glad you brought that up, because there's a difference in a certification and knowledge. There's a huge difference there, and I like the thought of mentorship. Just I'm the same way. I grew up. I grew up in my safety career, trying to find people to bounce things off of and such, because there was no. If you wanted a safety certification back then, you were an industrial hygienist. That was about it, and maybe a CSP, but that was all that
And that
was
doesn't
available.
make you qualified. Let's just be clear
That
on
does
that, right?
not make you qualified.
Certification means that you know, you have the requisite number of years of experience, which at this point is 4, a degree in safety, which doesn't give you the field experience, or
Right.
doesn't guarantee the field experience. And it also is a test. It's a test. It's a one-time
Yes.
test. So, you know, you need that mentorship, right? I mean, I grew up twisting
Exactly.
people's arms to be a mentor, and hopefully people don't have to do that now.
So to be to be an electrician, you have to spend some time as an apprentice. Maybe that's something we need to consider. Maybe you need to be a safety apprentice for a while.
I like that idea. I like that idea.
And I don't know what that time limit is.
Yep.
I don't have the magic wand for it, but I know this. Safety is a continuing education process for us all. You're never going to arrive. You're never going to arrive. And so I've got a comment I want to make. And I want to go back to something that Bill said about early in his career. Technology is essential for managing your safety management system. But I'm going to quote Henry David Thoreau. I'm going to go all the way back to Thoreau. Even his day, he said this: men have become the tools of their tools. Don't become a slave to the technology.
Men have become the tools of their tools.
Yep.
Totally agree. That's
Men
a
have
great
become
quote.
the tools
It's
of
a
their
great
tools.
quote.
So while I utilize technology, we're using technology right now, and I appreciate that technology. It's ever evolving.
Right.
As a safety professional, you have to be careful, because you can get caught up in your spreadsheets and your technology and your third-party verification system and, you know, your electronics and all this, and miss the human interaction that is necessary to make sure that the implementation is happening in the field. So don't get enamored
That
with
part
the
is so
labels,
important.
right?
Go ahead, James. We lost you there for 1 second. What was that last
I said,
sentence?
don't get enamored with all your tools. Remember that the tool is designed to get workers home safe from high hazard jobs. That's the mission. That's the
Yep.
mission. Get workers home safe, right? So let's go back though to something for safety professionals. A lot of young safety professionals inexperienced view these podcasts. And I'd like you to go back and give some advice, Billy, because you and I had sort of the same type of educational background and career in safety. I just happenstance into safety, sort of like you happenstance into safety. But you mentioned the professional development you did through CSHO and things of that nature that gave you the more the knowledge to help grow your career, and also the tools necessary in your toolbox to go out and to assist in identifying hazards and assessing risk and putting controls in place. So all that to ask this question: what advice would you give the person who may not work for a large corporation with a lot of different resources? I'm talking about the person that works for 150, 100 employee contractor, maybe company, that maybe started out in HR or started out in the field, and next thing you know, for 50 cents more an hour, Billy, they became the safety professional. And you know, what advice do you give to them in order to grow their career and to fulfill their mission of getting workers home safe?
Well, as we've been talking about this whole time, you need to educate yourself. You need to learn what you're, because everything you tell someone, and especially if you're putting it in writing, can be discoverable. I want them. It's very important to understand that you can be held liable for everything that comes out of your mouth, and most especially everything you put in a piece of paper, in a text message, in an email, anything else. That can be in front of a jury. So understand the standards. Give factual information. If you don't know, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. And I'm not afraid to tell you, I don't know, but I'll find out. Get in a network, join an association, start networking with some of these. Find someone you like and you admire, and ask them questions. I don't know a single safety professional that I've got a network of thousands, right? And I don't know a single one that'll say, go find out on your own. We're here to help. Everyone's helping each other. So educate yourself, learn what you're doing, and be that people person. If you don't like people and you don't like talking to people, go find another career. Do something else. If you don't like people, go to HR. Then you get to run people off.
That might have to.
You're going to make a lot of
Billy.
HR people mad. Hopefully we don't have a lot of HR.
Yeah. Don't send me nasty emails. That was a bit of a joke. But you have to be empathetic to people, and you have to understand their challenge and help them find a solution to what they're doing. And for goodness sake, don't think you have to have the answers all the time, because we sometimes we don't. And we got to dig, and we need to find out. Don't be afraid to reach out to your OSHA compliance specialist. He's not an enforcement, or she. They're not an enforcement division of OSHA. They're there to give you advice. So use that resource.
State plan states a lot of times have a consultation business for small businesses. That's a really good place to go and get help before you need help, right?
Texas
and then there's always us consultants, right?
Yep.
But like, you need to augment your practice, right? There's no shame in that.
Yep.
You can either augment your practice with finding those mentors and those other people in the network, Or you can augment your practice if it's really something that's out of your wheelhouse by hiring an expert, right? Hire an accident investigation firm, hire an audit firm, or a person that does that, or hire an industrial hygienist, or, even if you need a peer safety professional to come in, there's no shame in it, right? It's only learning. So,
Right. Be humble.
Be humble, right? Be humble and open yourself to the universe. So, I know we're getting towards the end here. I think that's a great thing to close on, is some advice to safety professionals coming up. Find your wheelhouse, expand your wheelhouse. Make sure you're looking for the helpers, right? As Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers, right? Because there are helpers out there, and there are people like all of us who had to struggle to come up, and we know what it's like to not have the answers. So, ask us. I guess we said this on the last show, right, James? Ask us. We'll try to help. So, I don't know if anybody has any other closing remarks.
Thank
James?
you, Billy, for coming on, and thank you for what you do to help bring workers home safe from high hazard jobs. And I know
pleasure.
your passion, and thank you again for visiting with us here on the Risk Matrix podcast. For those of you
Roll
that are doing, roll tide. Make sure you go down, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and until the next episode, stay safe.